espresso.
3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are starting a new month, new theme. We started it out with the tail end of Strange May. And now we are going to war. As we are, I chose the theme of war movies because, well, sometimes you got to talk about that which you don't want to talk about. And somebody once told me that one of the most horrifying things of reality was war. So, and I'm sure that's true for many veterans. As we now speak, but I will hand this over to the person who subjected us to this movie. Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about the movie that you put forward here?
Well, as I know, war never changes, after all. But we are discussing the anime by Mori Masaki called Barefoot Gen, a 1983 film. This was one of a two-part series, actually, based off of the, I want to say manga, and they had several, actually there's a lot of iterations of this story, but it talks about the horrors of war, specifically the nuclear detonations over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but mainly Hiroshima, really, as we explore it from the point of view of a child named Gen and his family. Actually, since we have a guest here tonight, I don't know, or Brittany from Embry Arts, she is on with us usually for our anime discussions, which we'll be doing this week on Hare plus Goo, a very similar anime.
Oh yeah, it's very similar.
Especially in tone, yes. Was this your first time with Barefoot Gen?
The movie, yes. The manga, no. I was made aware of the manga about 10 years ago, and read it, and it's based on the real life events of Kenji Nazazawa, about him and his mother surviving the bombs at Hiroshima.
I was going to say, a lot of this came from eyewitness account, and not just that, but from actual witness himself. So, yeah. Whew. Not something you want to witness firsthand, to be sure.
No. I mean, Kenji's still alive. Probably still telling the story, but he's a manga artist, particularly in the early days. This is a Jump title. For those who are wondering where this is is one of the early monthly Shonen Jump titles.
Goes right along with Dragon Ball.
Absolutely. Except it ran before Dragon Ball. So.
Yeah, well. So what was your first impression of this?
I mean, it's meant to be horrific. It's a very lighthearted and humorous at moments, but then you get to the horrors and it's meant to be that shock. And a lot of Nakazawa, a lot of his manga cover the same topic of what he lived through in Hiroshima. So it's not meant to be this pretty and nice story, but we do see his family, well, his mom and him live through this situation. So, I mean, this is very much, I mean, it's autobiographical, because it's his manga that spurred on this movie, and his events that he lived through. Hence, it's a good way to get a first-hand account of living through such an atrocity.
Indeed. So I guess we'll go to Tammy. Was this your first time with Barefoot again?
Yes, it was. 'Cause, yes, I really don't really get into Japanese anime, and I don't really get into having to read it on top of that. So there was two things that I did not enjoy, but um, but I don't know how to. I don't know what to explain. I didn't really know going into it how deep of a subject it was going to be and everything. I'm thinking anime. It's just gonna be a cartoon thing. So it was very moved and basically somewhat impressed. I don't know if that's the right word, but as to with it, because it was not what I expected. Like I said, I was thinking of just normal cartoon type of a thing, okay, whatever, and it's anime and so I don't really want to say I enjoyed it because of the subject matter, okay, but I did stay interested in the whole thing and everything, and it was interesting and it interested me, I guess, is the best way to describe it, because you don't want to say enjoy because of what it was.
Yeah. Understandable. We're definitely going to be hitting a lot of dark places this month, so I figured I would just start us off as dark as humanly possible. I don't think I prepared us enough for Deer Hunter, but getting close to it.
But yeah, it's just it was very, very interesting and a lot deeper than I was expecting.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
The cat was trying to get into my drawer. Okay, so. All right, Jake, was this your first time watching Barefoot again?
It was. This one's definitely been on my radar for some time. I know you've mentioned it for some time. And so I went in feeling like, okay, it's time I finally saw it. The movie does have a reputation for being a very difficult watch. And I don't think I have a copy, which is one of the reasons why I was forced to watch the link that you sent, which I did not. Honestly, I don't think that it was terribly appropriate to watch the film in English, but I didn't really have much of a choice. So it was an okay dub, but it just seemed a little off for this story. Knowing that it was a partially, in fact, very largely based on autobiographical events, I do understand that I have to. It definitely gives you a whole other appreciation for what these characters went through. I know that you have said, Brandon, more than once that there's the frequent comparisons between this one and Grave of the Fireflies. And I know that you've said more than once that you feel like Grave of the Fireflies is way too manipulative, and that's one of the reasons you don't like it. And maybe I'm misquoting. I hope I'm not. But
manipulative, but in a different way than you might be thinking.
Well, okay. But the point being that kind of stuck in my mind. And to be honest, I feel And a much more prescient comparison might be In This Corner of the World, since that one, I believe, took place in Nagasaki, but it's the same basic idea. Someone,
Good companion piece to this one.
Yeah. But I felt neither of those films, I felt more baldly manipulated in this one than either of those films. Like I said, I know the events are based on real life, but the way they're structured in the film, I feel like there could have been more finesse. I did feel like, wow, that's way too convenient that happened, or what, you know what I mean, on more than one occasion. So, like, again, I don't know exactly how much is different from the real and how much, but I feel like, what's that?
The movies were actually serialized shorts, stories. So that's why it kind of feels a little jagged.
Yeah,
because it is.
That
it's kind of
makes
like
sense.
1 episode, 2 episodes. Yeah,
that makes sense. And there is sort of an episodic, almost anthology nature to the film, which I'm sure we'll get into as we discuss it. But so my first impression was marred by having to watch it in English dub, and I think it was partially marred by expectations. There were parts where I had to look away. This is one of the more visually disturbing anime I've seen. And this is like early 80s animation.
Well, they were a chief about visually disturbing in the 80s.
Yeah. That being said, overall, I think the animation was pretty solid. Basically, the long and short of it is I am glad I finally saw it. I'm not really wanting to rush to see part 2, but I'm feeling like I should one of these days.
If it makes you feel better, part 2 is much more hopeful than part 1.
Right. So I've heard. And one of the interesting things about this one is that for almost more than the first third of the film is very hopeful and upbeat. I mean, it changes in a flash, which is appropriate for the actual event. But I was just very intrigued by how much of a disconnect there was. And again, I give the movie that was actually very effective. So overall, but it does lure you into a false sense of security. So overall, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm glad I finally saw it. I had kind of mixed impressions on my first viewing, but I definitely want to. One of these days, it will be in the collection, and one of these days, I guess I'll sit down and watch both of them in the original language, as it should. There are some films where that is important, and I feel like this might be one of them. So, yeah.
Like you're not going to watch Baccano in the Japanese as soon as you get to
That one's going to be interesting.
you should watch that one in dub because Baccano, it is America.
With Baccano, it depends on how I can find it. Will I be able to get a physical copy? And if not, which one will be provided to me?
I posted a link. I posted a link to watch it in both sub and dub, actually.
Okay.
So when we get to it, we can do it.
So, Dave, was this your first time with Barefoot again? I think I sent Dave. You're the only one I sent the link to the second film.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to watch that one yet, but because I will eventually watch it. But I ended up downloading the subbed version, so that we could see it in its original language. But also because I just didn't feel like logging into Facebook. But this was a first time watch for me. I wasn't sure what I was going to see watching it. I had heard, I know that Brandon, you have thought about putting it forward for the anime discussion before, and we just haven't gotten around to it. And I think you've thought about putting it forward for the group at one point in time, but now we finally had a moment. That being said, I didn't know that this was based on reality. I knew it was based on reality, but I wasn't sure how far it was based on reality. And if so, there was a lot of shit that happened to Barefoot Jen. I mean, my God, that was a lot to happen, and a lot for the mother to deal with too. I mean, I'm surprised she was able to come back from that.
She literally goes mad briefly.
Yeah, she does. And and I have sat through Grave of the Fireflies, so I know some. It's almost like you're seeing the other side of the reality, just like Tora does for war films, And the thing is, there's going to be some things that I probably won't be able to unsee, at least for a little bit, from this one. It does definitely go graphic. I mean, it's nothing that I could that I had to turn my head away from it, but the reality of the situation, I think it hit a little bit more home when it wasn't just the bombing of the Hiroshima. It was the after effect, because they said the second terror of the whole thing was not the bombing, but it was the disease that reigned with the Black Rain, and the aftermath, the stuff that you don't really think about, and the fact that there was a second bomb dropped, when Japan still wanted to continue their war, so, but it's interesting to see a different view of the situation. It's not something that we were taught in history. We were taught the American side of it. We weren't taught what went on with the Japanese people themselves. So,
well, it's the victors that write the history, and it wouldn't do very well to teach this part of it until you're a lot older to understand it more, I think. Even in Japan, this movie they actually started showing it to younger kids, and then they changed their mind about it and said that when Japan says that, we need to hold this off to older kids, that tells you something, because they were showing Grave of the Fireflies to little kids. But I think it's also about what the films are trying to portray. But
yeah, I remember, I think we said it in the discussion on Grave of the Fireflies. I remember talking to a Japanese friend in college. It's like, oh yeah, I grew up with that movie. And I'm like, really?
I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have grown up with this one. But with that,
technically you would.
So Dave, was that all you had for us?
I think for right now, I mean, there's a lot that goes into the graphics. Once the bomb drops, I'm sure we'll get into that.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that definitely. So for me, I admit, when I first heard of this, I had only seen two films that were considered well known as this is the definitive film about the world. Actually, one. I'm not going to say the second one. The second one was a propaganda film. The first one, it was Grave of the Fireflies, which I kept being told, this film is about the ending of wars, and it's all about how horrible World War II was, and the purpose was to show how bad the war was on the Japanese side. Which, of course, when I found out what the film was really about, it kind of irked me to no business, because yes, they're both manipulation, but the second one was emotional manipulation that I almost felt was disingenuous. It wasn't in Japan because they were straight up about what they wanted the kids to learn. But here, I feel like that whole concept of that was wrong. Is, this is basically about educating youth to work together for the good of society and to not go off on your own. That whole Japanese collectivism thing. Whereas this film is more about just straight up, war is bad. War is horrible. These are the effects of it. Straight up, we're going to basically show you how terrible it is. And one of the things, and I've seen this in both the dub and the sub. The only other film I'd seen before this was, I think it was called Shooting Stars or something like that. I can't remember what the full name of it was, which is probably even more disturbing than this in some ways, because it was an early animated Japanese propaganda war film about cutesy anthropomorphic animals going to war against the evil Americans. It was disturbing in its own right. But yeah, this one to me was the first time I actually said, okay, this one really does what everybody told me Grave of the Fireflies was, which was to show the true horrors of war and how difficult it was for the Japanese side. Not for the army or the military, but for the actual people during World War II. This is probably one of the first films I saw that I actually felt that with. It wasn't the only. Jacob mentioned one, as a matter of fact, that actually was pretty good at that as well. But this one definitely had the shock value to it.
Ironically, this has also been featured recently with Godzilla Zero. They show the survival after the war and the remnants.
Actually, Godzilla -1 definitely had
-1, yeah.
It had a good war element to it. But yeah, it's just interesting to see this, to see how it was, to see this there, and the overall narrative. At least I haven't read the written material, but at least in the anime, both the sub and the dub both seem to take more of a this war is bad approach, not these evil Americans approach, like I have seen in other portrayals. It was basically, this is senseless, which is a very interesting approach to it.
Which is funny because the father actually has a totally different approach to it too. The father, very early on in the animation, in Barefoot again, very much was very outspoken about like how he felt about the war, and he thought the war was stupid, and I guess that was unpatriotic of him, according to some. Like,
well, it would have been.
Well, I mean, again, the creator of this story, he himself he blamed all sides on the war. He basically was like, this shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't know if his dad actually was pacifist, like he is in the movie, in the manga, but he himself is pacifist.
Yeah, and again, it's about that fervor, and both sides had that fervor. I mean, if you were going to the United States and saying how horrible it was to bomb the Japanese, trust me, you would have probably gotten hit a couple of places if you had done that. So yeah, it's a horrible. I mean, but I do think that this is one of my first times looking at the horrors of war firsthand, seeing it like that. And I've watched it. I can't remember how long ago. It's probably been at least 20 years since I saw it the first time. And God, it's sad when you get to that age where you're like, yep, 20 years ago. All right, yep. But still, it holds up as far as that. So that's my first impression of it, was just the general shock value, but also something else I felt was something that I've been told was the reflection of Grave of the Fire. Again, a lot of this was what I was told Grave of the Fireflies was supposed to be, was that, oh, Grave of the Fireflies gives you this enlightening, light feeling from beginning to end, and you leave it feeling happy and satisfied. And meanwhile, I felt empty and bitter at the end of that
Who the
movie.
hell told you were going to leave Grave of the Fireflies happy?
But this one, I didn't say I would be leaving this one happy, but I definitely felt like there was a continued undercurrent of hope. It was dashed at certain points, but Gen never truly gave up throughout. And that theme continues in the second film over more hardships that he faces. But I feel like that's a little bit more prevalent than in this film. Because the first time I watched both films back to back. This time I watched this one. So
both are based on real life accounts. The difference being is the creator of Grave of the Fireflies made its main character Yuta die.
Yeah.
Despite he lived.
Yeah.
Through it.
It felt like it was a bit more of a way of driving it home. But yeah, and also Grave of the Fireflies was kind of manipulated the account a little bit more to move towards the towards the director's aim in the film. So that's also there. Plus, as I said before, Grave of the Fireflies, they were still showing that to really young kids. With this one, they started doing that, but then they stopped showing it to the young ones and said you had to be at least 11 or so to see it, which I'll admit, yeah, that's kind of, because I was reading about that. I was like, 11. Well, yeah, I guess, you've gotten old now. You're good. But I guess it's different than say, oh, well, Grave of the Fireflies, here, you're 5. You're good. Go ahead.
I'd be traumatized if I was an 11-year-old watching this film.
Or those showings of Grave of the Fireflies back to back with Totoro.
I was traumatized because I watched the what was that Nova, the something of life. So.
And also, if you think about it, there's also one film I love watching, a documentary that we'll do one day. We go back to documentary month again, which will be The Atomic Cafe, which was also a really good film about the bomb and what we put our own people through with that. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and start. To me, I think the film is kind of done in 3 parts. Essentially, that you can say are fully distinct. You've got your first part, which is kind of more about Gen and his family kind of surviving in the war times, and you get to kind of see how tough it is during the war times. And then the second part is, well, the bomb. It's the bomb, so to speak. And then the third part is more about them surviving, the aftermath of it. Not the immediate aftermath. I consider that in the second part, really. But I'm talking aftermath after it's been days and they're dealing. So the first part of this, we get to meet Gen and his family, his younger brother, his older sister, his mother, and his father. And, of course, his mother, who's very pregnant at the time. And we get to see them as they are dealing with a lot of the issues, mainly shortages of food and having to shelter for various bombing raids. Even though they're realizing at this point, it's like, that's odd. We're not getting bombed as much as some of these other places. But what did y'all think of this part, Gen and his family?
I mean, you definitely see something that you don't really see in American film. I don't know why. I guess maybe we've never really had the experience, but the really harsh rationing of food at the start is just, mind-numbing. And the concept of those days, you'd have several kids still in a family. And here you have a family of, 5?
Mhm.
Going on 6. I know the story-wise, he had the pregnancy after the bomb come out, but it happened before the bomb in reality. But yeah, it's just not a pleasant thing to think of. Just having to starve while your country's at war. And luckily, as far as I know, here in the U.S., no one's felt that since World War II. I don't even think we felt it in Vietnam.
We felt it worse during the Great Depression than World War II.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things we were able to do in World War II is send people that couldn't go to the war to work in the fields.
We haven't had this exact thing happening, but definitely when it comes to people starving and not knowing that's definitely gone on in this country and still goes on in this country. But yeah, the exact what they had here, this is
I guess
a little different.
I guess the difference
War
would be
rationing is the concept.
how widespread the difference is, because there's always going to be, in almost every country, you're going to have people who are really poor who cannot afford to eat. That's a part of most, not all, but most countries in the world.
What was it that the father was actually trying to make? I was trying to understand what he did.
He was making sandals.
Yeah, sandal painting, stuff like
I
that.
wasn't sure.
He was growing both wheat and making sandals.
He was selling baskets so that he could get food for Hansel and Gretel. No, brooms. He was selling brooms.
That's not that far of a stretch.
But of course, one of the more important lines that you see at the beginning is the father is working in the fields with the wheat, and he talks about how the wheat comes back again and again. And that is a message that does resonate throughout.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in World War II, our rationing, from what at least I know of my grandparents and so on, is that there was definitely rationing, but not quite to the level where a family of 5 who actually did have work was trying to fight over a sweet potato. Yeah.
Now, to be fair, that wasn't a sweet potato. That was a yam.
Yeah. But still, I would say that one of the things that's interesting is, though, as hard as it was for those, there was definitely, it was almost an upbeat feel to the first part. Yen definitely was a very optimistic child, and his little brother was pretty good. I mean, his sister was, the typical older sister, like, kind of taking on the role of the mother in many ways, kind of being the disciplinarian and so on, but still. I mean, it was kind of, I felt like it was mostly uplifting, even with the harshness of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if the bomb wasn't even included, this would be an interesting story about a family's survival in war.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean,
even before the bomb dropped, they had air raid sirens that would tell them to go to, hide out or whatnot. That was something that I noticed.
One thing I will say about this one that differentiates it from Grave of the Fireflies, and probably in a way that would make it seem more upbeat or hopeful, I guess you could say. And definitely the point that Brandon made about that one being down on the laziness of youth and whatever is true. It's definitely there. In that one, the adults seem almost cruel, almost unfeeling towards the kids who can't make it on their own. But in this one, there's much more of a sense of community, of people trying to work together. And I will give it that. There's much more of a sense of like the neighbor looking out for the family and all that kind of stuff. There's much more of a sense of community here. Which,
I hate to say it, though. Grave of the Fireflies was more realistic in that concept.
Oh, yeah.
There were
No,
a
I
lot
agree.
of kids that were put to death for stealing food, which
Yeah.
Gen does.
Yes.
At one point in this film, he and his brother go and steal a fish. Now, the rich man was generous enough to be like, no, I understand.
He would
In
regularly
reality,
whack
he would
them
have been
down.
put to death.
But he definitely gave Gen a beating.
Oh yeah,
You're right.
So yeah, I think that was one of the things that you could see that it could have happened that way, but at least there was. I feel like that's probably one of the most propaganda style way this is told. Is it definitely tries to push a much more positive view about humanity individually. Not necessarily as a whole, because as a whole, humanity sucks. But, at least then.
The story is about survival. So, I mean, he wanted to give that feeling before telling having even harsher survival.
And, it's very possible. I mean, I don't know whether the story of the fish was necessarily true or not, but it's very possible that the person at the time could have had a softer spot for him and had thought that through. I mean, shoot, there are people here that would definitely kill you off for stealing something of theirs very quickly. Matter of fact, when I was growing up, I knew of people who were shot just for going on somebody's land, much less. So, but that's not everybody. Some people are just like that. I would like to think the fish is almost the climax of that first section, really. If you think about it, because things were moving to a head. They wanted to save their mother, who was kind of feeling ill at the time, and they heard that the carp blood was going to save her. So that was very much there. And of course, Gen was also doing something nice for his little brother, making a boat for him, which got finished at a very inopportune time. But we'll get to that in a moment. Any other thoughts about this section of the film?
Was it any more inopportune than the brother making the boat for his brother and it?
Yeah, true.
The sister got the rice from the neighbor right before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, they had plans to eat good that night if things had actually worked in their favor.
Yeah.
And hey, that fish looked good when it was cooked at the end. They had some good food modeling when they did the artwork.
Which the fish looked more like salmon after a fashion.
And carp is not that good a fish to eat. It is all bone.
Oh, I mean, it's a horrible fish to eat.
You can eat it. It could be worse. But yeah, it's supposed to be bony as all hell.
But all things considered.
That's the reason why people kept them as pets and not as food.
Well, and also, and you'd said it was a rich man. I had thought it was a monk. Maybe I was mistaken on that.
No, it's a rich man.
Okay.
It's a rich man.
But either way, a koi pond would be an essential part of their landscape. And you can imagine, that's another thing. Like, they just called it a carp. I'm guessing it was probably more likely a koi, but if so, those can be.
I mean, the term is like interchangeable in Japan. They have carp and koi ponds.
Well, strictly speaking, a koi is a carp hybrid. But where I was going with that is koi are held in very high regard, and you often see them in temple ponds. They also can be very expensive. The Japanese really get into hybridizing certain creatures. Koi are one of them. And they can go for obscene amounts. So especially if this guy was a rich man, he may have literally been giving these kids more than their weight in gold just by letting them take a fish.
Well, the reason why Hiroshima was attacked or bombed was it had the naval military base there.
Right.
They were off on the bombing where they bombed, but it was Hiroshima before the bomb was an affluent area. I mean, it's wasn't an decrepit town. It had business thriving there for the last several decades.
Mm-hmm. Which at one point in the film, they kind of wonder it. Well, every other town's been bombed, but we haven't. And I honestly, the American military may have been aware of this. I sincerely doubt the average American would have had any knowledge of that. So Hiroshima getting overlooked for a while might have made perfect sense. And if it, like you said, it was a big place there, for them to be so surprised.
Yeah. Hiroshima was basically what Norfolk is to the United States.
Right. But I'm saying, like, from their perspective, it makes perfect sense that they would go, well, how come we haven't been bombed? But it would also make perfect sense that they wouldn't have been. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess we can move on to everybody's favorite part of the film.
Cow bomb.
Yeah.
Cow bomb. Which, I mean, a couple of interesting things. And I'd actually heard the account about the ants prior to this also, which is just animal, like, weird behaviors happening prior to the bomb being dropped. And that whole thing of the ants going in, again, going to school and talking with the little girl. Not this one, but but another one that didn't get as badly damaged as this one, but also took some damage, just a little bit.
Ken was lucky that ball dropped.
And then, of course, just the family trying to prepare.
Indeed.
And when that bomb went, that was a truly shock and awe moment. With that scene, I mean, the little girl up above, that was like the first one that they show of them just vaporizing her slowly. And I admit, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, they went there.
Well, and also there was the mother also talked about a little girl who had been shot down by enemy planes. So that was a story that she told Gen, so that he would realize that these air raids are not something to make light of.
He wasn't taking them as seriously because they never really dropped bombs on. They was like, well, it's just spy planes again.
It's just scouts.
It's like, well, yeah, of course. They're scouting it out to destroy the whole city. So, yeah. But I don't know about y'all. The first time I saw that, my jaw hit the floor because I didn't know what I was getting into when I saw this originally. I was just told, well, this one, because somebody once told me the recommendation was, well, if you thought Grave of the Fireflies was kind of disingenuous in how it was, you'll probably like this one as a war film. It shows some of the suffering a little bit more in a different way. And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. So I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. when I saw it for the first time. And yes, my jaw kind of hit the floor, and I just sat there in shock for the next 20 minutes or so, watching tragedy after tragedy unfold in the most disturbing way possible. Most of y'all, except, well, actually, no, Brittany, this was your first time seeing this in animation.
Yeah.
So, what was y'all's reaction to seeing this for the first time in animation?
Woo.
Dave, it looks like you were about to talk.
I wasn't surprised how graphic it went, but there, like I said, there are a couple of moments that I will probably remember. Like, there's a moment after the bomb has dropped. Two moments. One where there's a woman with holding her children in a pool or in something that used to be a house, and then another one where the mother is walking, trying to find milk, and
Yeah,
the baby is just
the mother in the tub is actually it's a real thing you can look for. The picture of the mother that was basically fossilized with her daughter in the tub.
And
So,
the baby
yeah.
that was sucking on the mom's nipples, and she made a comment, he doesn't know that she's dead, you know. And when you hear something like that, those are the sad things, you know. And I think those two moments are ones that I will remember afterwards, at least from the movie. So,
Oh, shoot, you got that time where the mother was out of milk because she was just some malnutrition had her, and the other woman who had just lost her baby volunteered her own milk for the child because she had just lost hers after threatening to kill the baby first.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of the imagery of the fossilization, like I said, the mother and the daughter in the tub was a real image. He used a lot of actual image that was acquired from the actual event where they'd find the bodies. I'm kind of surprised the animation doesn't show, because there's a very infamous area in Hiroshima where a shadow is burned into the ground.
Yeah.
From the bomb.
One of the things that was interesting, of course, is when Gen is going, you see these people shuffling around, and they basically are the Walking Dead. They just don't know it yet. And I can imagine, though, from a child's perspective, seeing this would...
there's no other way to describe it. I mean, the accounts, not just in here, but I mean, if you hear any other survivors' stories of an atomic incident, it literally is. If they're alive, they're walking dead. Their skin is more likely burned off.
I just imagining that through the eyes of a child. Most adults wouldn't be able to deal with that imagery, but God. And then for him to get home, and his father, his sister, and his brother are trapped under the house.
And this was a real event. He described him and his mother having to leave their father, sister, and brother to die in the fire that they couldn't save them from.
That would also definitely scar a child for life, no question.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that was also a tear-jerking moment when you got to know these people for the first solid third of the movie, and then you have to watch them all die, and then the mother kind of going mad for a moment. laughing hysterically.
And it takes the neighbor coming by to sort of snap her out of it. That was definitely a sad moment, yes.
I mean, think about it. You're in that situation. I don't know anybody who wouldn't snap in that kind of situation. I mean, everything, not just you, but everybody you know is either dead or walking dead.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure, me being Jen, when the bombs dropped, he was standing next to a girl, and that girl was half burned and dead after the bombs had dropped, and he tried to get her out from under, but then he realized that she was dead, and that's when he realized everybody else was dead or dying. How can a child, deal with? I mean, I realized Gen's a little bit older than his brother was, but that is a harsh reality. All of a sudden, boom, most of the people you knew are gone,
And actually, this is only one of 2 times in history that an event like this has occurred.
So he was born in 1939. So he would have not even been 10 at the time this happened.
I was saying more like 6.
I mean,
45, I think.
45 was when the bomb hit.
So 39, so 6, maybe.
6.
Yeah.
A 6-year-old dealing with this.
So I feel like they might have. I didn't feel like he was 6. I felt like more maybe 8 or 9.
I think they aged up the character to be more.
He probably did. He probably did age up the character.
Yeah.
It's a much easier narrative to be able to show, and it's an easier to relate narrative when you have a child that is a little bit more able to convey stuff. And as you go further in the series, that is an important piece that a 6-year-old would not have been able to fill that role.
I think maybe he also put himself as the older age, because maybe after going through all of this, that's how old he aged in his mindset, after everything. So to me,
okay, I have to make one correction here. Nozawa is dead. He died of lung cancer in 2012.
That's a pretty good long age to get to after surviving.
Either caused by smoking, because everybody freaking smoked. But I mean, you got to think, he was in this situation. The cancer very well could have been caused by the bomb.
could have been.
Oh, I was wrong. In Japan, you had to be 12 before you were allowed. If you were below 12, your eyes had to be covered deliberately during certain parts of the movie.
Ugh.
So at 12, you were deemed good enough to be able to see the movie all the way through.
For kids.
But whereas Grave of the Fireflies is a much more child-friendly film.
It is interesting though. That he did manage to live that long, because in the movie he does suffer the early effects of radiation sickness. And so to be able to pass through that and live a long life, that's fairly impressive.
Well, I mean, people go through radiation treatment all the time, which is essentially the same thing. And I mean, yeah, he loses his hair, but it comes back. So, I mean, I'm looking at a picture of him in 2006. He had full hair, unless that was a wig. So, I mean, he probably had radiation sickness. But being young, he probably was able to recover from it.
Yeah, and there different people with different genetics can recover from some things better than others. So,
Yeah.
I mean, as we move into the third section of the movie, which is more the survival, because as time goes by, the army comes in, they find out that they're bringing some food in. Jen has helped his mother like build a little shack there for them to stay in. They discover a small boy that kind of reminds
Hey, buddy, are you okay?
of his younger brother,
Sorry.
which they kind of adopt into the family. And a lot of that is trying to survive with the baby and their new family member, which part of this is hopeful. Part of this is also despair, because you also have Jen again having the radiation sickness. Him watching, before he realizes his hair is falling out, he watches this other guy, this military man, bleeding out the backside, losing his hair, and then collapsing and dying basically right there.
And the tension is the military guy wasn't even there at the bomb. He got it from just grabbing the corpses and taking the corpses home.
And that's well, of course, that's the lingering radiation. That's the fallout.
Yeah.
They made an entire series about that on
Amazon
Prime. Yeah.
Wonderful series, but yeah.
I think between the part 2 and part 3, what got me was I didn't actually realize just how nasty this was. I knew it was nasty. I just didn't know it was that nasty. You know? I mean, yes, we had every right to retaliate after what they did, but after watching this, it's just like, I don't think we really had to go that far. You know?
Proportional response. It was not.
Japan's government was very, and I mean, they still are. Japan very much honors pride. And unfortunately, it was the pride that led to arrogance that came to this, and both sides. But
I understand that, but I mean, geez, you know, and you know, and then we had to go do it twice.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
it's just like, I don't know. I
America had to show that they were the stronger people.
Well, that I understand too, but I just didn't realize that. I never realized it was to this extent until I watched this, and I just can't believe.
Oh, I mean, I'll tell you guys, it's worse. There's 3 live action movies.
Oh yeah,
of this.
I haven't been able to bring myself to watch the live action films.
Yeah, a Barefoot again, and a drama, action drama.
It's just so sad. It is just so sad, the extremes that we went to. You know, I realize war is war, but when you're seeing it, how this was from this child's point of view, and seeing what actually, you know, as you guys were saying, that this is based on true events, you know, it's just terrible.
I mean, a lot of it
is terrible.
The saddest thing is that a lot of the graphic imagery is based off of pictures,
right,
and live action accounts. So when you're grossed out by that, it's not them just trying to gross out factor. It's literally them showing what it was.
This movie, though, really does illustrate. Just before we went on, of course, Brandon and I were doing our nominations for the Versus Awards. And, of course, one of the big films this year is Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer famously is quoted as saying, it's not his original saying, but he famously shared the quote, I am become death, destroyer of worlds. You see this movie and you're like, yeah, I can see what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Oppenheimer and Einstein himself, both of them regretted having to make the bomb.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean, there is a lot of stuff that went in, because if you look into things, there's a lot that went into the decision of the bombing. There was the whole idea of saving about the military cost to the United States to actually do the land invasion, which would have probably been the next. That's how my grandfather would tell it, because that's what they were told. Some of the stuff that's come out later is that part of this was also a race against the Russians, because we wanted to defeat Japan before the Russians got involved, so that we would be able to have a hands-on in the rebuild instead of them. Which is very possible, because they were getting ready to set their sights on Japan.
Well, Russia had basically more in the game to get back at Japan, because they just came out about 20 decades, or I mean, not 20, 2 decades ago, from the Russo-Japan War, which is what started the whole Tsar of Russia killing at the end, and the rise of the Soviet was the effect of the losing to Japan in the Russo-Japanese War.
Not to mention in World War II, Japan had also invaded Manchuria, which was adjacent to Russia.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like I said,
for Korea for years.
A lot of it's based off of, we need to end the war there as quickly as humanly possible. And that was the only way in the minds to do it that quickly. Not saying it's right or not, but that's probably the mindset of it all. It's like, we can't let Russia come involved in this. And we don't want to lose our own troops. These are things.
And as we all know, instant gratification is the American way.
Well, and Truman was a very different individual than FDR, or even FDR's original VP, who was very different politically from Truman. So
Truman basically was he was forced to do this, because it's like you could keep the war carrying on with Japan for years after Germany had already been defeated. And you'd start to lose heart into continuing to fight the war. And that's basically why Truman had to make the decision.
Of course, the way he's portrayed in Oppenheimer, he comes off as almost villainous in that.
Well,
he is.
As time goes on, a lot of things come out with people. But history proves people as they are over time. Like I say, Truman was very much obsessed with taking out communism and the Russians. And so it would not surprise me if that didn't play a part. But we also get to be treated with of course, the Emperor surrender of Japan, which you could see a lot of people so visibly upset about that. So basically, like, they've been, it's like, what is all this for? You giving up now after all of this?
One thing that was very interesting in the movie, and I cannot honestly remember if I've heard this before. I think I have. I can't remember. But I do. But in the movie, they specifically say that this was the first time he had ever given a public nationwide address. And I'm like, what a way to make your first nationwide address. I mean, that's especially
the emperor is usually sheltered. We don't hear from the emperor. There's still an emperor of Japan. He has nothing of public record. You rarely see the man. The only reason he came public in the recent decade is because he stepped down and let his son take over.
there was some sort of scandal there too, if I recall correctly, but I can't remember what.
Well, I mean, that was a scandalous moment. But yeah, you don't hear from the emperor. You hear from the prime minister or whoever. In the case, it was Hirohito at the time. It was the emperor. But
it had to come from the emperor because
I mean,
the United States would not have taken it any other way at that point.
It was a rare moment when FDR came out. He was one of the first presidents to have a public appearance or public speaking announcement. So it's something new that was going on with countries, and then just to hear from the emperor at that time for the public is just
or shoot the King's speech. I mean,
Oh,
if you think about it, that a lot of the time. I mean, radio was still relatively new with what you could do with it.
I was going to say, I think one of the reasons FDR was the first to directly address the American, or one of the first, is I think that he coincided with radio becoming a household item. That wasn't the case before. So,
and I know in 1954 was the first time a transistor radio first existed. You know, for kids to like carry around.
Shoot, the only reason why King George wasn't the first to do that address to the nation was because his father believed in radio as much. It just wasn't as widely spread throughout. It was, like I say, it was a new way of doing things. And I do think that it was one of those things. It's one of those rare moments that you needed to have somebody of that level speak. Because,
what was it? The final Japanese soldier got the information the war was over in the 90s?
Yeah, I remember that dead in one of the islands. That's got to be rough news after being dug in and ready to fight that long, though. That's
yeah. I mean, there's an Archer episode that literally makes fun of it.
Of course, then again, you got to wonder back in Civil War times how long it took all of the people to truly know that the war was over.
Well, I mean, that's what Juneteenth is. Yeah. Juneteenth was what? 20 years almost after.
I believe that was commemorating the news of the emancipation. But the wars, the stuff did not travel nearly as quickly as it does now, not remotely. It's interesting the lag times that could happen.
And in the third part, a lot of the more there was of course the whole Japan admitting defeat and surrender in the war. And then, of course, one thing about Barefoot, again, that does have that manipulation factor is that they always seem to say just when things look like they're getting good, then tragedy strikes again. Oh, look, we've got the milk for the baby. Oh, baby's dead.
I knew the moment that they were going and getting the milk. And, I mean, they made sure to state it was the Americans that brought the milk. To them.
Powdered milk.
But I mean, the moment they got all that milk, it's like baby's dead.
Well, and also when they had the lingering shot on the outside of the cabin, and then you're like, no good will come of this. But that was, I think, what I was meaning before is I know most of the events in the film are based on real life, but I have no doubt that they tweaked and or reorganize things for maximal effect. And like
his infant sister did in fact die after the bomb of malnutrition. She, like I said, she was born before the bomb, so they dramatized at least her birth. But I mean, it's interesting to see, did they actually get milk at the time? Did Gen actually find the rice that he did? I can believe the rice. You find a warehouse full of rice. It's all burnt to a crisp. You dig down, you find white rice. Believable.
And even in those cases, a lot of times you get enough rice on top of it, it would absorb the radiation for the rice at the bottom. But rice is good at absorbing stuff.
I love it.
But there was also the fact that they worked for this rich man taking care of the man's brother to get this, Gen and his younger brother, who stuck it out. And what did y'all think of that? That one was a little bit difficult with all the maggots and the guy's wounds and stuff like that.
Very realistic, though.
Very realistic. Yeah, it's more of that. Oh God.
His family was more cut from the cloth of the aunt in Grave of the Fireflies. The more he is just a drain on our resources. You need to just let him die. And he's like, he's my brother. She's just like, eh. You know, and then the little girls are making sport over how long people will last. Yeah, they were.
I wanted to slap those girls. I really did.
Yeah,
they were very well removed from the fact that it was war.
Yeah. Now that was definitely a rich family. There was no question there. They were insulated to the extreme. But they, the one brother eventually, I thought, kind of redeemed himself a little bit. The one who was actually injured, he started off a royal prick, but understandably, I think we might say. And once the kids, they actually treated him like a person and not like a dying object. And or an object of curiosity or horror or whatever, and that actually struck a chord with him, and they were able to get along.
Very much that's more than likely what the author was going for,
right,
to try and humanize, because like we said earlier, he's a very pacifist person, in his own time, and it showed in the father. So to treat people that are suffering from these wounds, literally we saw the people before that were complaining about the itching of the maggots in their wounds. It's, you got to think, even medicine was so far away from what it is today at that time.
Well, the end of the movie, of course, that baby dies, but there is a little bit of hopefulness at the end as they spot some of the wheat sprouting in land that they said was never going to support life for years. Now, I will say that after looking at what they did I've seen pictures and videos of Hiroshima now, and they have managed to revitalize it through a lot of effort and work, and it is a very beautiful city these days. One of these days, when I would love to go to Japan and visit the place to see. But definitely that concept is like life will endure, life will thrive again. And Gen himself, seeing his hair growing back at the end of that, showing that he is hopeful to keep going with a brother that looks like his younger brother, and still having his mother, at least in this film.
That very message is what the Peace Museum, which exists in Hiroshima, is all about. It's life can be destroyed in horrific means, but it can be rebuilt, remade. It's just, you're going to have to deal with the harshest of elements at times.
Well, I can tell you this. I went to the Holocaust Museum in, what was it, New York or trying to think. But there's this room where you go and there's all these shoes of all the Jewish people. Because you go in, they hand you one of the one of the people who might have actually been in a concentration camp at one point in time, and then you walk in and there's this whole room filled with shoes. That is just horrifying to see right then and there. I mean,
Yeah.
and you think about that type of thing when you think of the devastation that went on with this story. I imagine they have similar museums where, you know.
Well, I mean that, yeah.
Effects
The dome that you see of the building. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, it's the Hiroshima Peace Memorial.
Yeah.
Which is the building that survived, that they show at point blank. It's the Peace Memorial and the Peace Museum there is set to tell the horrors and show it. And they have a tower there. You can look over the city of Hiroshima and it shows like an etching or view of the scenery as it was from when the bomb dropped from that viewpoint. And it's meant to be impactful, but at the same time, it's meant to inspire that, yes, life can be built up again from this horrible atrocity.
Well, I mean, it just goes to show that usually in war, it's not the governments that suffer, it's the people. And I mean, the same thing happened to a lot of the Chinese people at the hands of the Japanese, which were atrocities as well. War is just filled with atrocities. It's horrible.
But we ended up taking German aspects by putting Japanese American.
Yeah. I mean, we had our Japanese internment camps. George Takei was in one of the camps, most notably, the actor.
Wrote a book about it and a play.
And he starred alongside a Holocaust survivor with Leonard Nimoy, was a Holocaust survivor. So,
but war never changes.
Indeed, as we'll probably see this month. It comes in different.
I was going to say we have plenty of lovely war material left. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I figured we would start on a light note, and
it was a bright light.
But one thing I will say that people could compare this to Grave of the Fireflies is there are a lot of people who feel that Grave of the Fireflies had a very hopeful and enlightening ending that sort of like left people feeling more peaceful or even more optimistic at the end. I didn't get that, but I understand where others did. Whereas this one also has something similar in that it's a little bit more blatant in your face about it than Grave of the Fireflies. Grave of the Fireflies is more subtle in its mannerisms.
I mean, Grave of the Fireflies, they don't suffer the bomb directly. They kind of suffer the fallout, but most of what's killing them is the malnutrition.
They starved to death.
That one's much more focused on just the general malaise of war. The fact that, the food becomes scarce, that people are high strung and quick to attack each other.
It was a little bit more body horror aspect-ish.
Yeah, well,
you could say that.
And it's also more on the lines of, if you, in times like this, if you work together, you can survive. But if you try to go out on your own and be independent, you are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And that's but that's
it's a nihilistic point of view.
Well, it's a very Japanese point of view. Though I will say that they have been changing culturally as the years have gone by.
Right.
It's the same. It's the same point of view that led to the black companies working people to death, literally, and the declining population of Japan because you're supposed to work yourself to death, and then somehow have children in the middle, but mostly work yourself to death mentality, which has been changing. Matter of fact, many people in the government have seen this is not the way to go. They're actually
Japan's biggest problem right now is they are not accepting of outside people into their environment,
which they're also working on changing culturally. Their government is now like, we need to rethink this a little bit. We're in trouble.
It's going to take another generation at least.
Oh, it will. I'm not saying it's not. I mean, Japan's very xenophobic by nature, but
well, it's not just that. It comes again back to resources and all that kind of stuff. The whole us versus them mentality that is rampantly problematic in this country too. Is countries all over the world are becoming much more resistant to people coming in from outside. That's unfortunate, but yeah.
Japan is starting to go in the opposite direction though, because they more started out of being super resistant to people from coming. Actually, they've always been resistant to people.
They've always been resistant.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
if you want to get into Japan's history, I mean, just look in the Ainu culture and how they treated Ainu up until the 90s. So,
I mean,
they were the native Japanese people, and they treated them like crap until the 90s.
Again, common worldwide practice.
Yeah.
And like I say, I think as the world itself, as a lot of the more populous sections of the world become more and more xenophobic, because these other places are losing population and need population to survive, they're becoming less xenophobic by degrees. But you can't change like ingrained thousands of years culture in a day. But the fact that they're making steps to do that, that shows that there is something there, that it is a little bit more welcoming than it was, say, 50 years ago. But, and in probably another 50 years, they'll be much more welcoming because that's how you survive. Survival is there. Just like the work culture. The work culture is much better now than it was in the 80s.
They're becoming aware of the problem of the work culture. I wouldn't say they're better.
There's a lot more unions there now than there ever were, and especially
unions aren't going to solve it as so much as corporates need to realize that they're killing their employees.
Yeah, it's the idea basically of them having to, the workers themselves realizing, okay, I've got to leave, and if I leave, I can seek a new job and not be blackballed for the rest of my life. And there are companies that will do that because it used to be that way. If you left a job, you would never be hired again because they would say, well, obviously you don't want to work.
Yeah, but Japan also has a history of less firing in the black companies. So, I mean, it's you gave your life basically to that company for the rest of your life, essentially.
Unless the zombie apocalypse comes and then you're free.
Yeah, well,
Zom 100.
Yeah, but they dropped the ball at the end. So,
well, yeah, but and also a nominee for the Versus Awards this year, the live action film for Zom 100.
Oh wait, was that a live action?
Yes.
How did I not realize that? Anyway,
it was weird because they did a live action film around the same time they did the anime. Which,
not surprised these days. Actually,
we had to pull we got to look. Hold on. We got to pause while we look through the theater for money.
Are you doing the Golden Kamuy movie as well?
That one I don't think got nominated. No, but
I didn't see it myself.
Yeah.
You guys
need to. I'm half tempted to put the first season of Golden Kamuy in my choices instead of Ninja Scroll.
I'm sure Jacob would appreciate that.
I will not miss Ninja Scroll.
But with that being said, was there anything else on the plot for Barefoot again before we move on to other? I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
So, I guess one of the other reasons why it's good to have Brittany on is because of the animation levels. So we'll start with you, and then we'll move on to everybody else for production design when it comes to animation. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of saw similar in the similar project that's much shorter to watch, by Tezuka, of all people. Tezuka released a short, and you can check it out on YouTube. It's on YouTube in whole, uncensored, called Jump, and it covers the dropping of the bomb in the end. But this is very much the animation you would see in the early 80s, when they did more childlike characters, happier I mean, you had this, and then you had Fist of the North Star, which is more hardcore and edgy. So it's cutesy, and then when it gets grotesque, I mean, you see people, they're sort of human-like, but you can see like fleshy bits hanging off, but they're all one color. They're like red all over, which is probably easier to take if they went hyper realistic. At that point, you do see the decay of bodies, which is a very old animation technique. You have to learn how to transform something if you want to become an animator, from one thing to another. It's one of the first lessons you learn. So I'm not surprised to see it in such a grotesque form. But I mean, that was the point of the film, to show the grotesqueness. So yeah, I mean, it's overall the animation is what I expect of the 80s. So
how would you rank it? Do you feel like it would be good, bad, terrible, great?
I'd say good. It's not the best animation from Japan in that time, but I mean, that was reserved for bigger, profitable manga or whatnot that was being adapted in anime. Like I said, Fist of the North Star, Gundam at the time.
Well, yeah, happy-go-lucky stuff like this doesn't always, get the big bucks. How about the rest of y'all? What did y'all think of the animation?
I thought the animation was pretty decent. I mean, I've seen various Japanese animations from that time period, and no, I agree. This isn't like one of the best, but I would say it would be like in the middle, per se. But I'm glad that they weren't afraid to show the grotesqueness at this point in time. They were definitely not afraid to show that in the 80s, per se. And I think I like that time period of filmography from the Japanese animation aspect. So that being said, I mean, it was an atrocity that happened, and the fact that they could show it to a realistic aspect is at least saying something for it, to me. I mean, the fact that we're comparing it to Grave of the Fireflies is intriguing. So,
I mean, technically, I do think that they are two different animals, but with many considering Grave of the Fireflies and I don't think we hear it as much these days as it used to be. But I remember when I would hear it, I'd say "Grave of the Fireflies" was meant to teach us how Japan was dealing with the war, which was a total untrue statement. But but the idea of basically like this is the one true anime that really shows you what life was like in the war, and it's all about how they survive in war times. And this one literally is that. And definitely does not take a subtle approach. That thing hits you over the head with a hammer. The megaton hammer at the time.
Yeah.
Actually, megaton would be the appropriate term.
Yeah. And I will say, like, from my idea, from the as far as the general production, it definitely has that early 80s vibe, but I think it was, what was it we just covered recently that was older? Robot Carnival.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about how they tended to have very busy frames and all that kind of stuff. I didn't see as much of that issue in this one as I did with that movie. So there's that. Definitely some of the images, I think I agree that they could have gone a lot more grotesque with the imagery, and thank God they didn't. So yeah. But definitely the character designs were a little more rounded off, I guess you could say. I don't want to say simplistic, but they definitely, the character designs were more child friendly, one might say, than they could have been, at least before the bomb hit.
It was a very child friendly film.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Don't worry, Jacob. We'll get grotesque when we hit Baccano. So
well, I will say this: what I've seen of Baccano, I like the animation style. We'll see. It's one that
I cringed more on the first rewatching the first episode of Baccano than I did watching the bomb drop. And this.
Oh yay! Well, at least I can console myself with the fact that it has an absolute banger of an opening number.
There was, I do have to say, with the Japanese duo singing in the opening credits and the end credits, they complemented each other well. So, because you could hear the two singing together in the end credits. I was paying attention somewhat.
Yeah, the music in this was quite nice.
Yeah, I think it's good, and it does reflect the times, big time though. Wow.
Tammy, did you have anything on production?
Well, I don't know all about animation like you guys do. That's why I wasn't really saying anything, because, I don't know how to rate it or anything. Because this isn't something that I normally get into. So that's why I wasn't saying anything.
Okay.
Do you feel like the medium got across what it was wanting to get across to you?
Yeah, that I do.
Well, I think that's all we can really hope for when it comes to animation. In truth, if they're able to get the point across, I think that's the biggest thing. And if they can get it across effectively, which is of course a combination of music and animation and all that, then I think that they've done a good job at the end.
That I think they definitely did. It's just you guys are talking about keep talking about another movie that I know I didn't see, and you guys can compare how it looks and this and that, and I don't know all of that stuff. I mean, yes, this one definitely got his point across, and and everything, and um, so I don't know what else to say. So.
Uh, uh, and of course, we all know that little girl is going to have a good time after that whole part. Yeah. So,
Okay.
well, why don't we go ahead then and move on to I don't know if I want to say favorites, but what would say be your most memorable scene? And what is your favorite, or I say, well, favorite being in the sense of, most liked World War II related film when it comes to the Japanese front? Well, actually, we'll start with Dave. What was your favorite scene, and what's your favorite Japanese theater war film?
My most memorable scenes were the ones that I already mentioned. The scene of the woman and children that are basically fossilized, and the little bit afterwards where the mother is notices the child still trying to feed, even though it doesn't know that its feeder is dead, or whatnot, and vice versa. As far as, does it have to be animation?
No, anything. Just so long as
I would have to say probably the best Japanese war film that I would say is out there of my favorite is Tora Tora Tora.
Yeah, very good. All right. How about let's see. We're just going to go backwards. So, Jake, favorite scene, favorite war movie taking place in the Japanese theater?
I'm not sure that favorite is the correct word for scenes. As far as the most notable scenes, I mean, I think probably with the dropping of the bomb, the way that they present the initial part, the first 3 or 4 victims that they show, starting with that little girl, it's like I started looking away pretty fast. There was stuff I didn't want to see, but it was effective. There's no question about that. If I were to go and pick a more favorite scene, it might be the scene where they try to steal the carp, and just the way the old man just glowers at them and lets them quake in fear before he finally agrees.
Well,
I was actually amused by that. What's up?
He literally beats them fucked up. You see
Right.
blood flying from Gen.
Right. But but afterwards, when Gen makes his case and the guy's just staring at him, it's like I like that scene. I thought that was pretty good. And then when the kids, what's that?
It could have gone either way.
Well, and then the kids go by their house and see him, and they're like, "Oh crap, he's telling on us!" And then they come back. So that was good. I enjoyed that. As far as favorite movie, you said favorite movies set in the Japanese theater during World War II. Is that how I understood that?
Yep. So it could be an American side,
right.
Japanese side, other side, Chinese side. Yeah.
I mean, there are some good ones, and if let's just I'll just in terms of fairness, we'll say, to show the Japanese side of it, I will say Grave of the Fireflies within this corner of the world being the second run. From the American filmmaker, not necessarily the American side, but I'll say American filmmakers, possibly Flags of Our Fathers. That was a good one. Not Flags of Our Fathers, Letters from Iwo Jima. They were a couple. Iwo Jima was the better of the two, is what I meant to say. And then from the Chinese perspective, Lust Caution was a film that was vastly underrated, and I really enjoyed that one. So we'll go with those.
How about you, Tammy? What was the more, I guess, I won't say favorite, but what was the scene that you felt stuck with you the most in this film? And then what's your a favorite World War II Japanese theater movie?
Well, the second half, I have no idea how to answer because I don't normally watch war movies. So I'm not into war movies, so I have not a clue as to what to say.
This month's got to be rough.
As far as the scene, I guess I would probably have to, for the most part, agree with Jake. It really did stick with me right after the bomb went off and seeing what was happening, seeing what it was doing to the people in the buildings and everything. It just, it stuck with me. Just seeing the instant devastation. It just, I honestly did not know it was that bad, you know. Obviously, even when I was younger, I did not get into war stuff, and otherwise, maybe I would know it was that bad, you know. But I've never, even in history and stuff like that, I just never really got into paying attention to war movies or anything about war because it just annoys me because I just think it's the stupidest thing in the world.
There was a film from 1995 that was done about Hiroshima that wasn't too bad neither.
So I'd have to go with that. Like I said, I don't have a movie to tell you. You know, when David came up with the theme for this month, I had to sit back and go, okay, is there one that I actually did watch that I liked, or you know?
Hey, you hit the Cold War.
Yeah, indeed.
For the movie I picked.
Yep. One I've been needing to rewatch for a long time too. What about you, Brittany? Most memorable scene, and which I think is better.
One we didn't touch on. Again, trying to give water to the people right after the bomb dropped, and them taking the water and then just dropping dead, quenching their thirst, and then dying from that quench, because that was the only thing that was holding them on. That really hit me. If we're sticking strictly to war movies of World War II, I'm going to pull an odd one out for you. Sakota and the Thousand Paper Cranes. A story that takes place after the bombings as well. Very nice little drama. If we're talking American creation, I'm going to also go away from a movie and suggest Band of Brothers, as always.
One of the
wonderful
best TV
TV
shows.
series.
Or the Pacific?
Yeah.
If it's in I guess the Pacific, if it's in the Japanese theater.
Yeah.
But if I was going to just say war movie in general, I got to go to one of my favorite cinematic films, Ron. Japanese war, but it's samurai war.
Right.
Oh, Japan had a very bloodthirsty war period.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't stop until the 1910s, and then they went to World War II.
Well, World War One first, but yeah.
No, they didn't really do much in one.
Well,
So,
they were on the Allied side. They were more on supply lines and stuff like
yeah.
that. But they were actually on our side during World War One.
Yeah, well, we kind of screwed them over, which got us in the whole situation to begin with.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
There was a potential situation where Japan and the United States could have been on the same side in World War II. Shoot, even Germany for that matter. We've had signs of definitely an element that was very much pro-Hitler in the United States.
Yeah, until the Germans did attack certain American institutes, ships, we would have completely stayed out of World War II.
Oh yeah. So I guess for me, one of the more notable scenes was, of course, the time where he's talking about to the soldier, and the soldier like just suddenly starts like,
It's only until we're attacked. It's only until we're attacked is where we attack back.
like I say, it all depends on the war. As far as one of my favorite war movies to take place in the Pacific Front, Bridge on the River Kauai. I actually really like.
Oh right, yeah.
That was a very good one.
That takes the place of what I said before on the American films.
I mean, Japanese films, Chinese films, some of those had displayed it, but I would have to rack my head again because they
actually that was a British film, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was.
So that'd be my top British film.
But that's it for me. I guess I will hand it back to you, Dave. I don't know how long you want to do the outros for this one. But
there was one more movie that I forgot about that I wanted to put. I'm not sure if this was in Japan or whatnot, but David Bowie was in a movie called "Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence." That one.
You know, if you want to go one of my favorite movies about World War II, one of the World Wars, World War I, Joyeux Noel, very good movie.
Have we covered that yet?
No, but it's a good one.
Talking about it in the holiday seasons. Maybe this year we'll get to it.
Well, I mean, you could put it forward as a holiday film when December comes around.
Okay, well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed our discussion on the film. Hopefully we gave it a good talk. But let's go around and tell you a little bit about ourselves and what we do. So let's start with you, Brittany. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Brittany Dotson, otherwise known as I Don't Know, even though I don't have the voice active right now for it. I do streaming of art. In fact, we're going to be doing a stream tomorrow night about the potential death of the Cartoon Network. Be touching upon that tomorrow night. I also do gaming streams. We started doing Final Fantasy VII with mods that make the game look newer than it was right now. And art comics, we got Demon Blade and Witchin', that are webcomic series. They come out usually on Sundays. It's currently on a break until mid of this month.
Okay. Very cool. Heading over to Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this channel and another one with David and talk about movies with everybody and watch a lot of times some that I probably would never watch otherwise, but it makes things a little interesting, I guess. And if I'm not doing that or working, it's summertime, so I'm out with my 1972 Grand Prix.
Alrighty. Heading over to Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hello, I'm Kotobukijake. I am on occasion the co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus the World, where tonight we did our announcements of the nominees for this year's Versus Awards. So check that out. We had fun. We got a little rushed toward the end because we wanted to make it to this stream, but we still covered all the bases, I think. And of course, we also do anime discussions. I know we'll be doing one this week. I look forward to that, but I'll let Brandon tee that one up, of course. Generally, when I'm not doing stuff for that channel or for this one, I do keep fairly busy. I have a full-time gig that keeps me occupied a good chunk of the time. I try to do other things, but there just isn't enough hours in the day for everything that needs doing. But among other things, I finally got into Lord of the Rings. Feel like I've been a bad English major not having read that, so working on that. So, and mostly trying to stay cool because it has been friggin' hot here for the last few weeks, and it's annoying the heck out of me. And but I always do. Well, the heat is a good excuse to find time to watch some movies and TV shows to come on and join these fine folks for our discussions. And yes, I know this month is going to have some pretty heavy-duty moments. I'm actually kind of glad that Tammy chose a more genuinely enjoyable film because I know mine is going to be just as rough as this one. So, good times. Yeah.
Okay. And then over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm SeptumSin of SeptumSin versus the World. We do love our physical media, and Jake and I have been on the show much more regularly as of late. Matter of fact, every week we've been on, even when we haven't been on. So we are still slowly getting through the Disney collection, which will have another part out this week. And then we are also doing our anime discussion, which you'll get to see more of Brittany on that as we discuss a very well-known series called Hare plus Gu. Everybody knows it. It's just easy available, super easy to find series. But but otherwise, we will be definitely having that. And of course, if you can, watch the Versus Awards thing. I wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity. And since we're on this channel, I'll say, you know what? Watch the nominations on Inside Movies Galore. Give them more views. This channel should get as many views as it can. Or have all three running at once, just because. But definitely participate this year in the voting. I'm going to try and get those started next week. In the links down below, you'll get a link to the Versus Awards Facebook, and that's where we're going to be putting the polls. Oh, and next week, I believe it's your pick, Dave, for the movie.
Yep.
And just throw out there, one can get Hari and Gu for a mere $200 odd on eBay. So it's there.
Actually, it's cheaper than Aniplex prices for that with that many episodes in a series.
True.
Alrighty. And my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey we've been having. I know we're covering some darker stuff this month, but hopefully you can come along with us on this journey as I believe next week we are going to be covering a 1962 film, which is based on Cornelius Ryan's 1959 nonfiction book of the same name, about the D-Day landings in Normandy on June 6, 1944, called The Longest Day, which was produced by Daryl F. Zanuck for 20th Century Fox, and it's directed by Ken Anhedenia. So, looking forward to re-checking that out. It was one of my father's favorite ones, and honestly, I kind of like it too. So, not that it was a good thing that happened, but the way that it was presented at the time, with classic people that were involved. I believe Robert Mitchum was in there, as well as John Wayne, if I remember correctly, Henry Fonda, Sean Connery. I mean, what more can you say about those fine gentlemen? But I also do a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I also podcast with on Sundays. Tammy joins me with two of my other friends, and we also discuss some various films. Just recently, we covered Sleepaway Camp this last Sunday, so that I had a blast doing that. And I think we're going to be covering a documentary called The Secret this coming Sunday. So keep a lookout for that. As well as doing some video pickups and some video reviews from time to time as well on the channel. I also do some heavy gameplay on the channel as well. I record whatever I'm playing. And current one I've been playing. I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima, but today I started Horizon Zero Dawn. So check some of that out if you get a chance. So definitely like, share, and subscribe. Let us know down in the comments of what you thought of our discussion, and whether you had some similar thoughts and views on it. And we'll see you next time here on Inside Movies Galore. Everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.